Okay, so it turns out some other research conducted by New York University and Michigan State University found, to their chagrin, that the fingerprint readers that we currently have in our smartphones are not nearly as robust as we want them to be and assumed they were. I'll share just the first paragraph of their abstract, and then we'll discuss it. They wrote, "This paper investigates the security of partial fingerprint-based authentication systems, especially when multiple fingerprints of a user are enrolled. A number of consumer electronic devices, such as smartphones, are beginning to incorporate fingerprint sensors for user authentication. The sensors embedded in these devices are generally small, and the resulting images are therefore limited in size. To compensate for the limited size, these devices often acquire multiple partial impressions of a single fingerprint during enrollment to ensure that at least one of them will successfully match with the image later obtained from the user during authentication." And of course, all of us who have trained our fingerprint readers know that's the case. We're told to move our thumb around and position it differently and so forth, and get the edges during successive reads. Further, they write, in some cases, the user is allowed to enroll multiple fingers, and the impressions pertaining to multiple partial fingers are associated with the same identity, i.e., one user. A user is said to be successfully authenticated if the partial fingerprint obtained during authentication matches any one of the stored templates. Of course, what we recognize is that would tend to reduce the integrity of the search, because we've broadened the search space. This paper investigates the possibility of generating a master print, a synthetic or real partial fingerprint that serendipitously matches one or more of the stored templates for a significant number of users. Our preliminary results on an optical fingerprint data set and a capacitive fingerprint data set, which is what we have on our phones, indicate that it is indeed possible to locate or generate partial fingerprints that can be used to impersonate a large number of users. In this regard, we expose a potential vulnerability of partial fingerprint-based authentication systems, which is what we're all using, especially when multiple impressions are enrolled per finger. In their simulations, the researchers were able to develop a set of artificial master prints that would match real fingerprints similar to those used by phones as much as 65% of the time. Okay, so we all know, and Sherlock Holmes famously demonstrated, that a person's entire fingerprint is globally unique. But think about this. How unique is a much smaller portion of an entire fingerprint? How unique can a smaller piece be? And when I was trying to come up with a good analogy, I thought, okay, think of this as like having an ultra secure 20-digit PIN, but only needing to provide any 3 successive digits from within that PIN. When you think about it, I mean, it's obvious to us that that's not going to be secure. But the 20-digit PIN looks, oh wow, no one's ever going to get that. But there, the analogy is that neither is are our current technology capacitive fingerprint readers on our smartphones, they're not looking at our whole fingerprint. They're only getting a window of it. And in fact, that's why we're told to do multiple impressions and move our finger around in order to create a larger virtual image of the fingerprint. And then when we give it a partial print, it looks for it. And so what's happened is we're seeing another instance where manufacturers' desire to minimize their users' inconvenience has prevailed. And so what they chose was, the decision was, we absolutely want to minimize false negatives. We don't want to frustrate users by having them, keep trying to unlock their device by putting their finger down and saying, no, we don't think that's you. Nah, we better look again. Oh, try it again. Instead, it pretty much works the first time every time. But if we challenge how that's the case, it turns out that what we actually have is a tendency through minimizing false negatives to create false positives. And after reading this study, it occurs to me that I've never attacked my own phone's fingerprint reader by asking the people I'm meeting to try unlocking my phone with their fingerprint. And I'm going to start doing that. Every time it occurs to me, I'm going to say, hey, I want to see if your fingerprint will unlock my phone.
Interesting test.
Yes, I want to extend this to our listeners, and I will look for any feedback, because I mean, it's not something we typically do. I have no problem if my best buddy or a server at a restaurant, is successfully able to unlock my phone. I would like to know that. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna leave my phone with them again.
Maybe not the server at the restaurant. I do it with friends.
Anyway, I'm really interested. I'm going to obtain as large a population study as I can and get some actual feedback on how resistant my own iPhone 6S is to being unlocked by somebody else. Because this suggests that we may be getting a false sense of security from our fingerprint readers. Yes, they always conveniently unlock for us. But to what degree have we sacrificed their discrimination in order for it not to be frustrating? And Leah, one thing I've noticed, because for a while I'm sometimes having my meal out on a cold patio, temperature seems to be the largest impediment to my iPad, actually, in this case, unlocking. When my hands are cold, it doesn't like me nearly as much as when they're warm. So I never really worked to figure out why that was the case, but I thought that was interesting. That's the one thing I've noticed that seems to fool it.